Today I want to talk about a really iconic watch that's been around for a while that I was fortunate enough to get, and I really wanted to love, but I've been having a hard time, and I'll never get to love it. And I finally figured out the reasons. I'm talking about the Hamilton Field Automatic 38 millimeters, which is just perfect. The specs on it are perfect. It's the right size, the right dimensions. It's the right colors for what I like. It's an automatic. It's just perfect. Hamilton's a brand that I've always loved. My dad's a watchmaker, and I'm a watchmaker too, but I don't practice that anymore. So we've been working on Hamiltons forever, and we know a lot about the history of Hamilton, and it's a great brand. It's a great watch. It's got a great movement. The ETA, I think it's a 2924, which is an amazing movement. It's much more than what a watch like this needs. It's a really high end movement. It's a great watch. I just can't love it. And for a while, I couldn't figure it out what was going on, why I couldn't love this watch that I should love, that by all means it's just a perfect watch. And I bought it. I ended up buying it. I was walking by Dillard's one day, and I know the guy that sells watches there because I see him all the time, and I always stop by and talk to him. And they don't sell Hamiltons at this Dillard's, but he had a Hamilton that somebody had ordered, and they when it came in, the guy tried it on. He didn't like it, and he said, "No, you know what? I don't want it." So I got it for half price. I think I paid like $250 for it, something like that. Brand new. It did come on the leather band, which I don't mind because I usually on field watches, I like leather bands, canvas bands, or NATOs. Anyways, I'm not really into steel bands that much. So I got this watch and I started wearing it. Now, this is what I was cleaning it with right now. I do have a Weiss here, then we'll talk about the Weiss in a little bit, but right now I want to talk about the Hamilton. And, you look at this watch, and this is, there's a reason why everybody likes Hamilton field watches. Especially this 38 millimeter. This is a really, 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 liked watch. And I was so fortunate to have it. I put it on NATOs. I put it on different canvas straps. And I was really, really enjoying it. Kind of. At least I was tricking my mind into really enjoying it. But then after using it for a few times, a couple of days, or, whatever, I started not really liking this watch. It started taking it off and thinking, man, or taking it somewhere and thinking, man, why did I bring this watch? There's something about it. I finally figured out what it is that bugs me about this watch. There's like three things that really bug me, but the one is what really bugs me. Now, if you look at this dial, there's really a lot going on, and it's going to be really hard to focus because this watch is always hard to focus. If you find good pictures online, it's somebody took like 20 million pictures, and they finally were able to get a good picture of it. So it does have the numbers, the 1 through 12. It does have the minutes, and it has a military time. So it's got the 24 hours. Now that's a better angle. So, and then right there where all the numbers are, you can see it has a different texture in the dial. But you really got to look in there. I mean, it's there. It's just that this crystal doesn't have air coating. So you got to look around, look at the angles, flip it this way, flip it that way to see all the details on it. And that's what it is that I don't like. That's the number one reason. And I'll compare this to, for example, audio. If I'm here and I'm doing a YouTube video and I have a microphone, you can understand everything I'm saying. Your mind doesn't have to fill in any blanks. But if I was standing over here and I had to yell a little bit, you still understand what I'm saying, but your mind has to fill in a lot of the blanks. Because if it's a really intricate conversation, you're going to have to fill in a lot of the blanks to where you're not even engaged in the conversation. You're now more trying to catch up to the conversation. And I had this experience with during COVID. One of my daughter's teachers, we had a parent-teacher conference, but of course it was online because, COVID. So it was like a 15, 20-minute, conference between her and I. And we were talking, and I couldn't really understand what she was saying because her classroom had a lot of echo. She was at school. She was at her classroom and had a lot of echo. And she was talking to the computer. And I had earphones on, and I was really trying to listen, but I really couldn't understand. We could have the conversation. I was just not engaged in the conversation because, but by the time I was almost trying to catch up to what she was saying because my mind had to work overtime just to fill in the blanks. And she did ask me at the end, is there anything you'd like to say? Any suggestion? I told her, I was really clear with her. I told her, now I understand why my daughters have such a hard time learning online. It's because it's so difficult to learn. Just to even understand what you're saying is a task. Now, to be engaged in what you're saying, it's a much more difficult task. And I told her, if you had a microphone that didn't pick up echo, it would be much easier for your students to understand and to be engaged. And she said, teachers, she said, well, nobody's ever complained. I had no more argument to that, but I do know that if your mind is filling in the blanks, it's already overworking, so you're not as engaged, and that's what's going on with this watch. With this watch, when you're trying to look at the details, what's there, it's you're almost filling in the blanks. You'll never see the whole circle. You'll only see parts of the circle because of the way of reflective coating, and you'll never be able to appreciate this dial, as it's meant to be appreciated with this crystal. So there's a lot going on in the dial, but you'll never appreciate it. You're gonna see glimpses on this angle, that angle, but your mind is never gonna see the full picture. You just can't. It's just the way the dome is and the crystal is. And I think that's what it is. It's just, I look at it and my mind is just filling it in too many blanks. And it gets to the point where it just frustrates me. And it doesn't matter if it's, these lights or outside or wherever I look at it. Anytime I look at this watch and I try to figure out this dial, I'll never figure it out. I'll just look at angles of it, different angles and different lights and wherever, and I just don't want to see it. I'm not interested in seeing the whole dial anymore. I see it all in pieces, and then my mind just has to fill it in. And I think that's what's going on. They did a really intricate dial with a lot going on, but you'll never see it. If you change the crystal on this and put a crystal that's not that's got some coating on it, then maybe you'd be okay with it. But the way this watch is, you'll never see it, and that's one thing that's really frustrating. Now, if you compare it to the Weiss, and that's the number one thing. It's just I'll never be able to appreciate this crystal. Even if I want to see the red dot on I have to look at an angle. If I just look at this watch, I probably won't see it. I have to look for I'm talking about the red tip on the seconds hands. I almost got to move the watch around to find the angle, because if I'm just looking at this watch, I won't see it. Now, with this watch, with the Weiss, you'll see that it does not have AR coating either, but it's so simple. There's nothing going on in it. It's just a matte dial. And these are kind of difficult to. Oh, this one's in the way. Okay. So there's nothing going on. It's got the 12 numbers. That's it. And the seconds hands. And that's it. It's a plain dial. There's nothing going on, just matte. So your mind just looks at this appreciates the dial. You don't have to see anymore. You don't have to, squint to see anything or move it. It's there. It's perfect. And it's much more enjoyable. It's you look at this watch and you know exactly what's going on. You can see all the details, even though it does not have AR coating, and and it is a dome crystal too. So I think that's what makes the biggest difference. Now, there's another thing that I noticed about the Khaki, that these are both 38 millimeter watches, which to me are perfect size. I have a 7-inch wrist, so a 38 millimeter field watch is perfect to me. But if you look at this dial is much smaller than this dial. And that's because the case on this dial is thicker and the bezel, so that makes the dial smaller, plus it's clustered. Of course, the numbers are also bigger than on this dial. And I'm not trying to necessarily compare the watches. I'm just trying to explain why I never was able to fall in love with this watch, especially having this watch around. So you see this watch, and it just looks out of proportion. It just doesn't look right. It does have the right proportions or the right dimensions, but the proportions just don't seem right. Now you look at this crown, and it just seems too big for this watch. It just seems too big, and I know it's not a screw-on crown, and I don't mind it. It's only 100 meters, and that's more than enough for a field watch for what I do. Unless you were a diver, of course, but then you'd be wearing a diver's watch. But for a field watch, now you look at this crown Weiss, and it's much better proportioned. It fits the watch much better. More. And this is a mechanical watch. This is not an automatic, so it's a little bit thinner. And that's not one of my complaints because this watch is not that much thicker. So I'm not complaining about that. I understand that for a watch to be automatic, it's got to be thicker. Now, I do know the history of Hamilton. I do love Hamilton. I do love their history. So I always try to, really like this watch, enjoy it. And I think the more I thought about it, the more I wore it, the more I realized this watch just frustrates me. Every time I try to wear it, it on paper, it's perfect. On my wrist, it's not enjoyable. I just look at this dial and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's. I didn't know what I was thinking. Now I understand why it just always frustrates me to see this watch. It's like compared to like a nightclub. If you go to a nightclub, everything looks beautiful. The furniture's perfect, and the lights are right, and the ambient and everything looks perfect. I don't know if you've ever been at a nightclub during the day for some reason, and you realize that the walls are not painted right. It's just really dirty, and the floors are usually not very good condition. They're really dirty too, and wore out, and then you start looking at the furniture, it looks pretty beat. But all that doesn't matter because that place is designed to go at night. So at night it looks perfect with the darkness, and there's only certain lights that go on, so it just looks perfect. Nobody invests all the time into the flooring and stuff like that because nobody's really gonna ever see that. It's gonna be full of people and it's gonna be dark. So I think that's what happens with this watch is that they put a lot in the dial to enjoy, but you can't because it's just with that crystal on it, you're just never going to enjoy it. So I think that's what it is. I'm not saying it's a bad watch. It's a wonderful watch. I'm just giving my experience of what I see in this watch and why I think that I'm never going to be able to love this watch. I'll keep it around because I already have it, and why not? But I think it's just another watch I'll be hoarding for a long time. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.